The second session of the Commission of Inquiry hearings ended at about 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. Now, WIV4 News would like to clarify reports made last night concerning yesterday's proceedings. It was reported that the Premier holds a credit card in Prague, Russia. That is not the case. The city of Prague is in fact in the Czech Republic. Now, in the second session of Day 3, counsel for the Commission of Inquiry, Alex Milne, carried on with questioning surrounding allegations that belongership status was being sold to non-belongers. The Premier testified that the government has not granted belonger status outside of the cabinet. That matter was set aside and the questioning was carried into the direction of the Premier's loans and his affiliation with a name that was brought up in yesterday's hearings, that of Peter Worley. The Premier testified yesterday that he had received a $325,000 commission for his involvement in the sale of a property on Water Key to Peter Worley in 2006. It was also revealed yesterday that Peter Worley owned a company called Secured Holdings Limited and that company loaned the Premier $1 million. According to Milne, that $1 million was secured against one of the Premier's homes, the Bellevue Villa. According to Milne, there was a second loan secured against that property, a loan of $4.72 million from Coral Square Limited. Milne suggested that Worley and Secure Holdings had no knowledge of the second loan that was taken out against the home. His evidence came from a letter from Secure Holdings Limited. According to Milne, that same Peter Worley was also the owner of a company called Aquarius Development Limited. That company, Milne suggested, approached the government with a proposed supplemental development agreement a few weeks after Worley had acquired the Water Key property, the same Water Key property that he had purchased with the professional assistance of the Premier, the same property for which the Premier received the $325,000 commission. Milne questioned the Premier to find out if he declared an interest with Peter Worley when the supplemental development agreement went before Cabinet. To this, the Premier testified that he had no link with Aquarius Development Limited. Milne laid that argument to rest and moved on to developments, the developments of Dallas Key and Joe Grant Key. According to Milne, Dallas Key was being developed by a company whose managing director was named as Cam Keeney. Milne said that in 2005, the government was approached by one Arturo Malavi for his company to start a development, a high-end resort on Joe Grant Key. The Premier testified that that information was indeed correct. According to Milne, the government withdrew from an agreement with Malavi after a due diligence, which is an investigation of a business or person, returned unfavorable reports against Malavi. The Premier accepted Milne's account on that matter. Furthermore, Milne said the Joe Grant development did go on, this under two different companies. According to the Premier's testimony, it was discussed in Cabinet that Don Gardner and Cam Keeney were the principals in the new Joe Grant development project. However, Milne evidenced that for one of the two companies that were involved in the Joe Grant project, three of the principals in that company were the nephews of the Premier, Albright Gardner, and one C. Black. The Premier testified that at the time the development was brought up in Cabinet, he had no knowledge that his nephews were involved. The topic of developments continued, this time with the development on the island of Saul Key. Milne suggested that Mario Hoffman, a wealthy man, sought a 222 and later that number was increased to 238 acres of land to be used for the development of a golf course on Saul Key. That request was made on August 1, 2006, and according to Milne, was brought before the Cabinet the very next day, on August 2nd. Also, according to Milne, 2 days later, on August 4th, a company called the Saul Key Golf Club Limited was set up. Milne revealed that the company had two directors, one Stephen Prohl and Windsor East Limited. There were also two shareholders in that company, holding 50% shares each, Harbor Management, a company owned by Mario Hoffman, and Business Ventures Limited, a company the Premier confirmed in testimony was owned by his brother, Charles Missick. According to the Premier, he was not aware of the shareholders and directors of the Salt Key Club Limited when the matter was brought before Cabinet. Mill further revealed that Hoffman desired a 99-year lease on the 238 acres that he requested for the development of the golf course. According to Mill, the annual rent for that lease would only cost Hoffman $1 per acre, amounting to $230 a year. Mill questioned the Premier as to why that land was not offered to Hoffman as a freehold, which would render a significantly greater sum. The Premier in answer testified that concessions are given all over the world to developers because of the value that their developments would bring to the country. Mill's final questions to the Premier surrounded Mario Hoffman, his development, and the relationship with the Premier. Mill evidenced that Hoffman was the man who introduced the Premier to the chairman of J&T Banker in Prague, the same bank for which the Premier took out a $6 million loan. According to Mill, that loan was secured against Charles Missick's 50% shares in the Salt Key Golf Club Limited, and that loan was witnessed by Stephen Kroll, a director in the Salt Key Golf Club Limited. The $6 million loan, the Premier had testified, was to buy a house in Los Angeles. That house was never bought, and a $200,000 deposit was lost. The Premier testified that he retained the remaining sum of the loan, and that money was spent on expenses. Mill suggested in closing questions that the Premier stood to gain from the leasing of the land to Mario Hoffman for the Salt Key Golf Course development, and he ended saying that all these dealings led him to question whether the $6 million loan was even a loan at all. Day 3 continues tomorrow, still with the Premier on the stand, but with questions from his own lawyers. For WIV4 News, I'm Joydel Trail.